We're so excited. We have a wonderful guest here tonight, Miss London Lamar, who is a St. Mary's graduate. We're so excited. She'll tell us all about that and her life post St. Mary's. As always, we are being recorded. So if you do ask a question or speak or comment, whatever, you will be recorded as it's in active speaker mode. If you don't comment, you will not be recorded. But if you would like to ask and don't want to be recorded, just shoot over a question in the chat and I will ask it anonymously. And I think that is about it. Pat, anything you want to add?
No, I'll just sort of introduce things and then we can let London take it on the road. Okay, it's great to see you guys. So a little bit over that. Last Thursday a week ago, my Swedish daughter, Rachel, and I did the sort of general thing on women running as candidates for elective office. And then, you know, in another week or so, we'll do something on women as legislators. But that's on kind of a general level. And we are fortunate enough to have one of our very own, London Lamar, who has done both of those things. And so I'm just really appreciative that she's generous enough with her time. She's a very busy woman. And so I really appreciate London's generosity in making herself available to do the gig tonight. So without further ado, thanks again, London.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I tell everybody Pat was my favorite. As he knows, if I'm coming to South Bend, like he's getting a phone call from me. So he knows if he asks for anything, he gets it. That's my St. Mary's Papa, I call him. But hey, ladies, I'm so excited to be here with you today. My name is State Representative London Lamar. I'm a graduate of St. Mary's College. I graduated in 2013 with a degree in political science and double minors in sociology and intercultural studies. And I'm a politician. And I truly, you know, I'm kind of going to go through my life story and information about me to kind of give you a roadmap to what it's like to be a woman in politics, and especially an African-American woman. Since this is Black History Month, I definitely want to uplift the, you know, the struggles and bring light to many of the hardships I have to go through being in this position. But you know, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. If you can hear my Southern accent, it's pretty strong. I was born and raised, my mom and dad, and they divorced when I was like 3. And my mom and my grandmother raised me. And I remember my mom, my grandmother, and all our friends and family, backyard barbecues and things, they would talk about politics. And because I was a nosy kid and I wanted to know everything, I will always be at the table while they're playing cards, listening to their conversations. And then I remember every day growing up, my mother would pick me up from school, or my grandpa, and Oprah would come on at 4:00. Then right after that, the local news would come on, and like sitting there watching Oprah with my mama every day, because that's how she helped me do my homework. I was sitting there watching TV with her. I was listening, and I used to listen to the issues Oprah talked about. Like they were like real community issues. And I'm every day listening to this lady, like, because my mother thought she was God. And so it kind of made me very self-aware, coupled with the fact that I was always involved in some type of volunteer opportunity, church activity. She kept me very, very busy. And when you're young, you're thinking, Mom, wow, gotta go to this and this and that. But what she was instilling in me was the idea of service. And so as I continued to age throughout elementary and secondary education, I found myself always serving. And so even in high school, I was in student council. I played sports. I was on a volleyball team. I like math, so I joined math club. I did all of these different things to build up who I was. And so I remember in high school, I was really good at math. And I always thought to myself, I'm gonna do engineering. And I wanted to do chemical engineering because I like science too. Because I thought, being a Black woman, if I get into STEM, people want to hire me because I fit the minority quota and I make a lot of money. And that was my honest thought process. I was like, if I can add and do science real well, why not, you know, milk it as best as I could. So I ended up joining the Rotary Club, and they provided scholarships for me to go to this engineering camp at the University of Notre Dame the summer after my junior year of high school. And Notre Dame was one of like most beautiful campuses I've ever seen in my life. So I'm coming from Memphis, Tennessee, you know, predominantly African-American city with a lot of challenges with poverty and things like that. And I'm coming and seeing this immaculate university. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God. And I remember talking to a young lady involved in the program about, and she was telling me about St. Mary's. And I was like, oh, girls, I don't know about that. No, boys, what do you mean? But it was, I always kept that in the back of my mind. And so my senior year of high school, after having an experience there, I decided to apply to both schools. But in the meantime, my senior year of high school was the year President Barack Obama got elected to president of the United States. And as this is as a disclaimer, this is not an endorsement of a political party one way or another. Being a part of the Democratic Party is my personal political affiliation. So I do just want to put that out there. And so seeing President Barack Obama, you know, just light up, like we're high school students all walking around with Obama shirts, like really engaged, trying to figure out who's 18 to try to register these high school students to vote so they could participate. We're planning watch parties. Like we were so excited. And I remember the night that he won and seeing him take that stage with his children who look just like me complexion wise is one of the most amazing moments of my life, seeing that at 17 years old. And so I was already applying to all the colleges already, and I decided on St. Mary's, and I decided to call them. I said, I don't want to do engineering no more. Can you sign me up for political science, and can I still come? She was like, sure, you can change your major. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I came to St. Mary's understanding I wanted to do something in political science, and also understanding I wanted to take a leadership role. And so I came to St. Mary's, and St. Mary's was totally a 180 from where I was coming from. I mean, first of all, it was all girls. When I'm coming from a co-ed high school with football players and all the what, and it's also predominantly white. And I'm coming from a city and a high school that is predominantly African American. So it was a total culture shock, but being the outgoing London I am, it wasn't a big deal. And I was able to get involved and make plenty of friends and have the time of my life. So let me just say that. But when I heard about, I remember the first thing that I heard about when I came to St. Mary's Political Science Department was something called the Washington Semester Program. And I don't know if Pat remember me coming to his office as a freshman. I said, I'm trying to go to DC. I don't want to do all the other stuff. I want to go to DC. And so every semester, my goal was what to do to get to DC, because I was so engaged in the political process. I really wanted to be in it. And I felt our nation's capital was the way to go. So I was able to go to the Washington Semester Program and really see American politics in a very in-depth VIP way, with being a part of that program, being able to go to Supreme Court cases, interning for my congressman on Capitol Hill, going to all of these think tanks, you know, having discussions about the policies we see on the internet and how they actually come to fruition with many of these organizations, really opened my eyes to wanting to get in politics as career-wise, because it was, I saw how it worked beyond just being a person in elected office as well. And so having an experience and coming back to St. Mary really opened my eyes. And I came back my senior year knowing that once I graduated, I wanted to go to DC. So that was a very pivotal moment for me. But my senior year at St. Mary's, the 2012 election was back around for President Barack Obama. I was finally 18 years old, and I was thinking, you know, most of my students knew I was active and very open about my political views via Twitter. Twitter was really the pop-in social media back then. And me and Paige even talked a lot on Twitter about politics. And when the election came around, it was no Democratic club on campus. So I went to Pat's office 1 week before the deadline to turn in the papers for the club. And I asked him, can you be my advisor for the College Democrats Club? So I started the club on campus. I tweeted it out, put on my Facebook, text some of my friends. And I was thinking to myself, only 10 people were gonna come. We had like 30 girls in our meeting. You remember that page? Like, It was a full room, and a lot of the girls came out to tell me, they were like, we thought it was only Republicans if we didn't know about this opportunity. And so we aligned with many of your views, but we didn't have nobody to connect with. And so we were very active. We registered students on campus to vote. And Paige, I, and a couple of other girls took a road trip and went to go see Barack Obama the day before his reelection in Ohio. We took a trip down I-80.
I remember like emailing our professors at like early in the morning and being like, hey, not going to be a class, going to see the president speak before the election. Does this count as an excused absence? Because I think it should. And I think the only people I got an excused absence from were naturally like Belanger and Piers. Like everyone else was like, no, that's cool, but you have to be in class. I was like, okay, well, but it was that was like the top 10 life experiences.
I for sure took the any other penalties. But it was one of the greatest days of our lives. And just being able to share that moment, such a special moment with my St. Mary's sisters, was something that was very special to me. And being able to start that club, not sure of how it would be accepted by many of the students, and having so much support gave me the confidence to further pursue politics. So to fast forward, I graduated. And, you know, coming from a single parent household, I couldn't afford the rent without a job in DC. And I didn't have a job when I graduated. I had to move back home to Memphis, and I was searching for all of these DC jobs, applying, but I didn't have any experience. I'm thinking to myself, how can I get it if you won't hire me? Just getting that first job was really hard. And so one day my mom was feeling kind of sorry for me. So she took me to a pool party that her older friends were having. So one of her friends asked me, they said, what do you want to do? And I was talking about politics in DC. They said, okay, I'm gonna put you in connection with this girl. I know she runs campaigns here in Memphis. And so I said, okay. So I met this woman who started a small political consulting firm. She said she was looking for an intern. And I said, I'll be an intern. I have no problem in being an intern. I've done it before. So I began at this small political consulting firm in Memphis, interning part-time. While at the same time, it's running up on the fall. I decided to enter grad school because I don't have a job or anything else. But I did pick up a part-time job, seasonal job at Macy's, making $7.25 an hour, while also interning for this lady. So I'm grinding. I'm now getting involved in the local Democratic Party, meeting people, trying to get engaged, learning about the campaign process. And so I realized I'm at the Democratic Party meeting, and I realized, I'm like, where are the young people at? I'm like the youngest one there. And I'm thinking, like, Memphis has tons of young people. Like, what is going on? And so I started to ask them, can I volunteer, join the executive committee, get involved? Sure. And they'll give me the work to sign in tables and be the volunteer and do this and that. But knowing me, that's not enough. I want decision-making power. And I realized the easiest way to get to that table was to be a head of an organization. Well, Memphis didn't have a young people's Democratic organization. So I remember what I did at St. Mary's with the college Democrats, and I restarted the Shelby County Young Democrats chapter in 2014. And so I'm using Twitter and social media to connect with now my high school folks and young professionals I met throughout college about me starting this club. I'm getting it going. I get involved with the Tennessee Young Democrats, and I'm starting to build name recognition. I also run for office that year as well. I put my name on the ballot to sit on the state executive committee of the Tennessee Democratic Party, which you actually have to put yourself on the ballot to do that. So I'm just doing everything to get my name out there, meet people. I'm running campaigns, running my own campaigns, starting a Young Democrats organization, going to grad school at the University of Memphis, and making $7.25 an hour until I can get hired by her until next year. And so I'm just doing all of these things. So fast forward, I lose my race badly. I lost really terribly. But at the same time, I won 5 of the races that the firm had, and I did most of the work. We won those races. And so it added credentials to my resume of knowing how to run campaigns. From that, I had someone walk up to me And I told them that I was trying to look for a job. You know, I've done all this work, and they said, hey, there's this position at this organization called Stand for Children. It's the organizer position. I've seen the work that you've done on these campaigns. You should apply. So I applied, ended up getting a job, my first real job with a 401k and benefits or whatnot, a real salary. As an organizer around public education issues in Memphis. And so I took on this role for 2.5 years where I would be on the ground in impoverished communities, basically teaching parents how to be better parents to their kids and simultaneously teaching them how to be more engaged in the political and policy process. Taking a parent in the projects, teaching them how to talk to an elected official, driving them. Sometimes to get them there, I have to go pick them up. Getting them to the school board and getting them to stand up in a room full of people to articulate why they want a better education for their children. And I learned a lot of those skills from organizing, bringing people together, being on the ground, running actual campaigns, because it's just a very multifaceted skill set. You need to be a grassroots organizer. And so I did, while I was organizer for Stand for Children, I also continued to build up the Young Democrats organization and ran for the state presidency and won it. So in 2015, I became the president of Tennessee Young Democrats. And now I was leading the face of all Democratic operations for people under the age of 35 in the state of Tennessee. So I would travel around the state and engage with all these elected officials and Democratic Party leaders and donors around the importance of bringing young people to the table and also showcasing my skills. I would plan conferences, I would raise money, I would travel the state, plan events, do grassroots organizing, make sure our people were campaigning, host meetings, and then also fulfill my obligations with the Young Democrats of America and fly to all our national conferences. I even brought that conference to Memphis one year, planned a whole national conference. I'm saying that to say is, I use my leadership positions not only to do good things for my generation, to also showcase why I need to be the trusted leader to run things when it comes to politics. And so I'm building my rapport and my resume under the name of a particular position, while also making sure I have a seat at the table. So I make sure I always have a title to have decision-making power, but understand that I must equip myself and execute the skill sets to run these organizations efficiently and effectively, not just on a local level, but now I have the responsibility to do that on a statewide and a national level. So following my career in education advocacy, I transitioned to a policy associate at a women's reproductive justice organization. So I was working on policy and advocacy issues around with women having full autonomy over their decision-making regarding their bodies, whether you want a kid, don't want a kid, or have kids, and making sure they have the services you need to raise your babies in healthy environments. And that is something that's really important to me, especially coming from St. Mary's, a school that's all female, that prides itself in uplifting women and allowing us to be the leaders that we want to be, and the moms or non-moms that we want to be. And those values are very important to me. So, you know, when I took on that role, it was very real, and we focus on communities of color. In 2015, I witnessed my cousin die from pregnancy, and the baby died too. And so, you know, having that real life experience, and then now being in a position to like advance policy and seeing that the other side of how you move things based on outside the campaign world, because we see a lot of stuff on the news about campaign, but we don't see the behind the scenes works about moving policy through this process. And so I had to plan, you know, I had to be a communications person. Now I have relationships with the media. I can do press conferences, hold rallies, design anything on social media, make videos, pictures. I mean, the whole media package, I got you. While also being able to interpret policy and be able to communicate that in an effective way. And so we did that both traveling to DC and then also on the state level, where I would plan days on the Hill. I would create packets about the policy, the talking points, organizing poor members in the community, educating them on their bodies, and then helping them articulate that to elected officials as well. And so by this time, it's 2017, I'm about to turn 27 years old, and the open seat opens up for a state rep in my district. And at this point, I'm thinking to myself, it's time. Since the last time I ran for office, I just graduated college, had no job, really had no experience. When I look back then, I wouldn't vote for myself. Like, for what? You know, and I'm mature enough now to say that. But now at this point at 27, is that since then I've run in local, state, national organizations. I've worked for two advocacy organizations focused on issues that impact Black communities. I'm leading, you know, groups. I sit on boards. I'm doing A, B, C, D, and E. Now I can truly step to the table and say, I'm someone who can be a trusted asset for you. And I have the experiences and the issues that you feel are most important to the district that I live in. On top of, I'm third generation out the district. Like my grandma lived in this district. My mama lived in this district. I lived in this district. They weren't political or anything, but I know my I know my neighbors, and we've been knowing them for decades. So it was an open seat. So my district is heavily Democratic. So we have primaries. So I know you know the difference between primary and a general. So whoever comes out the primary is the winner at all times. Just the way it's set up. So I had to run against two older Black women for my seat. And so when I launched my campaign, I actually got fired from my job a month later because she didn't feel like I could continue to do that role and focus on a campaign. She wasn't confident. I knew my skills, but it's fine. So I was jobless again. So I emptied out the little 401k I had from the previous job, paid up my rent for a couple of months through the campaign. My mom and dad went half or, you know, kind of put in where they needed to on my car note. And I had a boyfriend at the time and he bought my food. And I could pay for my gas through my campaign account as long as I'm always campaigning, which I was, because I couldn't do nothing else. So I became my own campaign manager. But being a young Black girl in Tennessee, Black candidates are the least funded candidates. People never donate to us unless they see us do something great. They never want to invest in our community. So I only raised like $20, $20,000 max in my campaign. And so when I started off, I probably had less than $1,000. So I couldn't pay people to design stuff, do my website. I didn't have the money, but I was free. I had no job. I was creative. I was talented. I built up all these skill sets. So I was going to be my own campaign manager and put one of my lawyer friends in the role of campaign manager by name only, so she can try to raise me some money. But I designed my own literature. I taught myself how to use Photoshop. I designed my own website because it's easy on Wix. I did my own events. I did everything, my own field plan. I canvassed every day from like 11 to 4. Like I promise you, I knocked on every tier 1 door. Like they knew if they went to the polls to vote for me, they talked to me. I promise you they did. And so I worked really, really hard and I was really, really focused. And because it's actually a blessing that I got fired, because I was able to completely zone in on winning that race. And I was able to make it over. And I actually haven't really had a job since, and I thank God for it. I don't want a 9-to-5, can't do it. So, you know, what I thought was my biggest loss, oh my gosh, I don't have no money, became my biggest blessing because I couldn't imagine being in session right now and having to do a job as a state rep. Like this is a full-time job. And when we're in session, like it's all day. You know, I'm still wearing what I had on from this morning. So I'm coming into these, so I'm saying that to say like all of these doubts and fears that I had about being uncomfortable end up sometimes you have to be faithful and trust God that he's sometimes taking you through these hardships to open up something better for you. And I truly say those trials and tribulations and everything I went through to get elected then at 27 have been tough. I'm elected. 2 days later, the Republican Party drops. Representative Lamar calls Tennessee racist. Is Tennessee racist? Yes. But I can't say it, you know, because I'm a young Black girl from Memphis, you know, so I'm getting dragged on national media. You can go Google it now and find it. Fox News, this, I think it was an accomplishment. Tommy Lampkin, is that her name from Fox News, I think, talked about me. I was like, I'm famous, okay? So, you know, but it was also scary because at the same time, I live in Tennessee And while, you know, I was getting a lot of support from Black news media and they pumped me up, speak the truth, girl, I was also getting in my inbox, N-word, I'ma hang you, drag me out of truck, you, every racial term you can think of. So it was all, so my mom is an admin on that page. So she was getting all the negative stuff and I'm getting the good text messages from my friend. And now my mama sees somebody trying to kill me and she's just like terrified. And of course, I had to apologize to the whole legislature and I just got elected like 4 days ago. So it was a very tough situation and they did not let me pass a bill my first year in the legislature. I was the only freshman that didn't get to pass the bill. And so, because I said that, and so I had to work overtime to basically kiss white men's ass to get them to see I'm beyond this video. And it was tough. It's a humbling experience. But what it forced me to do is to recognize the level of government I signed up for and knowing what the legislature looks like. But it was also opportunity for them to kind of challenge what they thought about me because they think I'm one way and they got to know me and they just love me to the point where we were having meaningful relationships by the, you know, because I was so forthright in being able to change their perception of who I was based on how someone tried to market me. And so by this time, my first year, I end up getting pregnant and I'm single and not married, and everybody's judging me from Memphis to Nashville because I'm the youngest legislator and I'm also unmarried and having a baby. And I'm in Tennessee, which is a conservative state. So I have women in the legislature ask, where's your husband? And all of this other judgmental thing, or thinking I'm the stereotypical Black girl, you know, with no child father in the house. And it was a tough situation to have to deal with a lot of those criticisms, especially criticism from women. And so I'm steady working my ass off through this process because I'm trying to prove to people that despite the negative things you think about me, because I'm sitting here with a growing belly, I'm still the same person who's hardworking. So I'm actually overworking myself a lot. And so then in October 2019, I lose my baby. And now all of a sudden it's like oh my God. So the previous year, I've been passing legislation to help with maternal health, say that pregnant women, you know, need more time or have to, you know, take time off and everything. No, they won't. You know, my wife worked up to the day she had her baby. My wife, I did this. I was able to push it out. And I'm thinking, well, it's not that easy for everybody. And then you see it happen to me, your colleague in your face, the Black woman, the person who's been saying in your face, no, Black women are disproportionately on the negative end when it comes to childbirth and maternal health. Now it's real. So now I'm able to have these conversations with them, pass legislation easily, you know, regarding maternal health care, because now I get to bring my real life trauma to my advocacy, and it forced them to have to challenge their own morals based on what you see me going through. And so it actually, you know, it's a terrible situation. We can talk about maternal health all day long because that's my thing. And it's always been my thing based on what happened to my cousin, working in reproductive justice, and then now being able to insert my story into the advocacy that I've been doing. I feel like recently I was having this conversation with my girlfriend. I was telling her, I was saying, I feel like I finally am able to connect to the work in a real way. Outside of the trauma and the everything I've gone through, we can separate that for a second and talk about, I recently, a close friend of mine died, but he wrote a book, and one of the most powerful quotes in his book was, turn your pain into power. And so being able to take something so traumatic and literally be able to do something about that in a real meaningful way, and being able to truly connect with issues when I stand on a podium and be able to stand in front of all of these white men as the expert, and they know I'm the expert, is like a really powerful thing that I'm grateful for. Because I know a lot of people go through bad things in life and they're not able to bounce back or recover. But being able to, you know, do something positive and bring a different perspective to the Tennessee legislature, because look, the reality is I can't get a lot of progressive things passed. Tennessee got more Republican this election under Trump. So let me work on the things that I know I can get done. And if they're pro-life and they love babies, well, love my babies too in my story. And so now that I'm in front of you, let's have some real conversation. And I feel like I know that I can't get everything I want done in Tennessee, but I can get that thing done, and I can get it done in a real way. So that's where I am today. I'm just starting my second session, third year. I've actually now, the good thing in all of this is that building those relationships, having those real life experiences, and being able to see that I want to do something powerful with that. I've now been placed on my top 2 committee choices, one of which is the most powerful committee in the House, which is Finance, Ways and Means, what runs all the money, and sitting on appropriations subcommittee. So I now learn where the money resides, okay? Like how the money moves. And when it comes to really advocating for my community, I want to be able to get funding for my community. Money is the key to success. We're in capitalist society. We're in America. The dollar runs everything. And so in order to bring to me real impact, you need to be able to influence money. So I'm grateful that the Republican leaders felt comfortable enough to put me and want to allow me to take part in that conversation in a meaningful way. And then I also get to sit on the Criminal Justice Committee as well. And so I get to also help do more support around human trafficking, which is one of my biggest issues, and be able to actually sit on that committee. And then also be able to, like, a lot of the systemic things that have impacted the Black community are criminal justice reform issues. So being able to sit on that committee and have a voice and speak out, like next week, I got to argue against constitutional carry. And I'm just like, I'm 50-50 on it. So it's going to be a tough situation. So, but I'm just grateful to be in that role. So I gave y'all my whole life story. But I did that to say is when we're talking about women in politics and looking at that in a diverse way, I wanted you to be open about my life and my story to get there, to see, what it looks like to be a woman of color, be this young in this position, and what it takes to get there. And it hasn't been easy. I haven't nearly talked about all the struggles, but I want to let you know that it's possible as well, is that if you're intentional about it, and it's not overnight. Obviously, this is something I had a dream about since I was a kid, but when you truly are authentic about it, when you truly are real about the work, you're passionate about it, people feel that, your district knows that, and I really feel like my community knows that I'm really riding for them in the legislature at the state of Tennessee. And I'm also London at the same time. I'm going to be who I am, what I am, and I'm going to bring my personality and my story to the work.
So question time.
Hop in, guys.
I had a list going. Does anybody want to jump in first before me? Because you know me, I've always got questions.
I have one really quick. What would you say, like, the biggest challenge has been with fundraising? Like, specifically, I mean, I know that you're doing it all yourself and you're canvassing and you're obviously having to ask for money, but I remember, like, in class, Pat saying that, like, if you want to be a politician, you have to ask every single person you've ever known and loved for money.
Right.
How does that reflect, one, being an African-American woman that doesn't get funding like, a white woman would, or a white man,
right?
But also just like, how is that dynamic, asking people for money essentially for the fundraising piece?
That's a good question, and there's several answers to that. One, I hate asking for money. It's just that it first starts off with me, because I've always been a hard worker, and Black culture has taught you not to beg, because you don't want to seem, because of the historical dynamics. And so we kind of always have that, remember, don't walk in the store begging, or don't ask me for nothing, because mama could never afford it. Black families can never afford it, and they didn't want their kids in the store embarrassed by begging. So it's just kind of taught not to beg. So I've had to kind of jump over that kind of cultural dynamic. Secondly, I live in a Democratic district in a Republican state. So a lot of the PACs in larger organizations and corporations, they are more methodical about how they give their money out. So they're looking at, okay, first of all, who's the majority and who's the minority? So I'm already in the minority by being a Democrat in Tennessee. And then it being a Democrat, am I in a safe Democrat district, or I'm in a swing district, or, you know, am I in a competitive district? So because I'm in a safe Democrat district, like, it's regardless if it's me or anybody else, they're always going to be a Democrat. It's kind of like, well, we know they're going to vote a certain type of way anyway. So that's not a priority for us to fund. And then I'm Black. So, I mean, we just have less power than white people. So it plays a tough dynamic. So I just, you know, and then I'm gonna just keep it real. A lot of my friends and family just don't have the money, and like, they can give 5 and 10 as much as they can, but like, Black communities are poor. You know, they don't have, like, most of my friends, even my friends who are young professionals, we don't have still an extra $100 to give like that. You know, we got student loans, we trying to high rents, like, you know, that's why I barter a lot of times with young people. Like, okay, I'll set you up a meeting with somebody else, or do something for you, or babysit your baby one day if you take these pictures for me, you know, like, just be smarter. And because we've always had to be that way. I've always had to find ways to get to the end. So we can do better about funding Black candidates and Democratic candidates, but it's more methodical than anything. The fact that I'm in a minority. So when you're in a minority, you get the crumbs.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, I'm gonna, you know, you respond to this, London, but I mean, there's all the literature that I mentioned in the last thing that demonstrates that women, if anything, are better fundraisers than male candidates. But none of that literature, in part because for one thing, it's focused on the national level rather than state. And so when you're looking at the national level, the numbers of African-American women over time who have been candidates is so small that you don't get a picture of London's experience, where the matter of race just overwhelms any kind of possible advantage that women candidates might have. Well, if you're African-American, yeah, you don't have it. And for all the reasons that London's talking about. Yeah, does that make sense, London? Does that sound good?
Yeah, no, it's exactly, you know, it's just so many different factors that weigh into us being able to do these things. But we really don't come from a culture of money, especially in Memphis. Like, Memphis is one of the poorest Black cities in, you know, Tennessee. Like, and Memphis is like over 60% African-American, but we own less than 2% of the wealth in the city in totality. And that's a fact. And so I also think, like, and I represent a Black district. So you would think you go to the individuals who, you know, come from your community first. And I do, and there's some out there, but it's really tough because they want to support, but, you know, they have so many other obligations to have to endure. And so oftentimes, especially when I know someone doesn't have it, I won't even ask. And, you know, they tell you to ask anyway, but I sometimes consciously can't ask somebody who I know having a hard time or got all of these obligations for some money. You know, that is just me, you know, and my moral and my values that I have, I just won't do it. So I do try to connect with a lot of corporations and PACs to see how can I get more support, or connect with national organizations and make the argument that the South is actually the next battleground region of this nation. And we are actually worth the investment. And if you want, you know, more Stacey like Abrams people, you know, changing history and flipping states, then you need to invest in London Lamar. And that is the conversation I'm trying to have with more on a national scale, because more funding is floating around up there. And I'm trying to figure out how we can trickle that funding down to Tennessee. And then I want to say this about national or political organizations that irk me. They think they know everything about your community. And you sit in the office in DC. ball. Like that irks me. And like the biggest thing that when it comes to African Americans and fundraising is also trusting us to know how to use the money. I mean, our communities have made a dollar stretch for years. So don't tell us how to run it. Give us the money, let us run it the way we know best. And I think that Stacey Abrams did a good job of articulating that with what she did in Georgia. Like Georgia has a large African-American population, and they went untraditional with a lot of the PACs and organizations that came together. They got rappers involved. They were using slang. They were talking to art, like they were connecting with people and meeting them where they are and not expecting them to conform to this very structured way of politicking. Like, no, we politicking from the hood to the club, to the basketball games, to the restaurants, to the chicken spots, like where people actually are. And so, no, we're not hosting this fancy rally where Biden can come in and walk across this stage or using, like, no, he needs to come to the chicken shack. And he needs to come meet the people he needs to vote for us. And I think that we can replicate that model in Tennessee and other states across this country if we trust us with the funding and the money to connect with the people we best know how. You know, no one in DC can tell me about my community more than me. And so give me the money if you need them, if you want us to come support you.
Yeah, and that is so true about national organizations and how they deal with even on the level of the U.S. House, congressional districts. When PACs became really, really important in terms of a source of funding, and they would take cues back and forth with the national party organizations. Well, then if you wanted to get money, you needed to have a national pollster do your survey. So the first few congressional elections here, I did the surveys for the Democratic candidates for the House. Well, then I couldn't do it anymore because then the candidate would be unable to get PAC funding. They would be unable to get national party funding. So here's what it just mirrors so perfectly what London just finished saying. So they jump through the hoop. They would have the national consultant do the poll, and they get the results, and then they'd call me in to interpret them. Because the folks on the national level knew absolutely nothing about the congressional district. So they just kind of went through the dance. They jumped through the hoops they needed to satisfy the national organization. But certainly when you're on the state level and you're dealing with kind of the situations that folks like London are dealing with, it's harder to work around. You then just have to deal with the tyranny of those national organizations. And London's absolutely right. They always believe they know better than the rubes on the local level. And it's stupid, but.
So I have a question. I have a comment and a question, London. Thank you so much. I just love hearing from you. So I'm a 1988 St. Mary's grad, and by the way, I'm in Georgia.
Hey,
Abrams, we did it right.
Yes.
So anyway, but I have a comment. I have a question about agenda setting, but I have to make a comment because I love what you said about the local community. And I work at the CDC, okay? And I work in a division, and we administer programs. We give out money to state and local health departments and communities. And we have kind of like the premier program at CDC around racial and ethnic approaches to community health, right? It's all about, and what it is, and I work in the division of nutrition and physical activity, but it's a broader point. The point is, like, we can come up with what are the strategies that work to improve health, et cetera. But it is irrelevant if we don't, the communities, it's all about the communities. And so that's our approach, right? And I just love what you said about the community approach. And so that's when we put out our funding, it's like, look, your community, you have to form a community coalition. You got to get the right people at the table. You can take our science, and our science is good, right? But you have to figure out, how do you implement this at the community level? Because it's not going to work. There is no one size fits all. communities are different and the process is almost as important. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because I love what you said, and we try to preach this all the time. Like it's all about getting the communities engaged. So anyway,
I love it. Yes.
Yeah, just to underline that. Okay, so my other question though, which is sort of their question. So I wanted to ask a question about agenda setting, okay? Because what you talked about was there were some issues, so you're in the legislature, right? That you can speak to, you were talking about, children's issues, reproductive health, et cetera. But like, how do you approach this, right, in the legislature? Is it, I kind of understand the political environment, but how much flexibility do you have to agenda set and get involved in areas sort of outside what might be your traditional wheelhouse or what people perceive as your wheelhouse?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's actually a great question, because I'm actually still in the process of doing that. And I'll focus on my legislative agenda this year and kind of use as an example of how I set my goals. So of course, like you said, I'm traditionally doing my maternal health care, my human trafficking legislation, because for the last 2 to 3 years, I've built my expertise and have shown my willingness to dive deep into that work, building relationships with TBI and law enforcement and not going against them on everything, and getting them to trust me, that I am an ally and not an enemy, and working with these organizations and doing the whole strategy around those, because I'm going through that process of getting dragged for calling out racism in Tennessee. And now people, tell me I was right all along. And not being able to pass a bill that first year, I did not like that feeling. Like I'm not an activist. I'm an advocate, and I'm a boss. Okay. I don't not like being in a position and not getting things done. So the fact that I didn't get to pass a bill did not sit well with me. So the idea of supporting a lot of these grandiose, progressive, far left wing issues is just not something I'm interested in. I'm interested in being someone who can say she can pass legislation, says she can have a seat at the table and get things done. So I focus on things that are tangible, or are controversial without crossing the line, because I am in Tennessee. I'm a Black woman. I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm young, and I'm a Democrat. That's 4 strikes against me. So I am very intentional about the things I'm pushing. So I push things that I know I'm gonna get past. So those things, because they like me, they trust me, they know my story, half my agenda is gonna be those issues, because I want to leave session with some legislation passed. I don't care what it is. And it's a real issue in my community. That's the other half of it. Like, there was a poll done when I was running. The top 2 issues that were polled in my district by someone local were education and healthcare. So those issues, and crime, and those issues all fall in line with what my district says they care about. So I'm hitting that check mark too. I'm also pushing legislation that's going to help me be more powerful in rooms that I'm not currently in. And so I am pushing a bill around property taxes to, get it at a fixed rate. But even though I know it's not going to pass per se, what it is putting me in the rooms and having conversations with people who do taxes, assessing property, because one of the biggest issues that's growing in Memphis and Nashville is gentrification. And people are getting priced out their homes because developers from New York City, like, who are used to paying $1 million for a piece of property, with $1 million can buy a whole 3 blocks in my neighborhood or more, coming down, buying houses and stuff for cheap, doing these development process, tearing down homes in our community and building these nice, cheap row houses and everything. And they're shooting the value of the properties up. So now older Black folks who on fixed income now have these higher property tax rates, and they can't, or Black people can't afford to live in the neighborhood again because the property value is skyrocketing up. So I want to be able to do something about that. So I need to push legislation to get their attention and force people to have conversations with me about that. So I push get your attention legislation. And then I push legislation that is for the culture, but I know it's probably not gonna pass, but I just kind of believe in it. I'm pushing a marijuana bill to decriminalize under an ounce. Like Tennessee is still fully illegal. Black people are more than likely to go to jail if they have a blunt over a white person. And I think if you have under an ounce of weed, you are not a drug dealer, and there's no reason you should be going to jail when in over half the country is legal. So I'm doing that for my generation because that's the issues they care about. It connects with young people. I get a lot of social media hits when I talk about stuff like that because I push bills like that to bring them into the work. They don't care about my property tax bill. They don't care about some of the other stuff that I'm pushing. But if I come to young people talking about, I'm pushing a marijuana bill, they can be like, oh, so it's also a way for me to continue to connect with that group of people who I'm continuing trying to bring along with me. So every session, I set my goals on those 3 criteria: passable legislation, messaging legislation, and connecting with the community legislation. And we get to push 15 bills a year. And that's how I save half my legislative agenda, at least half, for stuff I know I can get done. Because more important than anything, I want to be effective legislator. And I'm not an activist. I'm not going up there to cause trouble. I'm up here to cut deals and get things done for my community.
Thank you.
Well, I have when the time is right, but I want to know, one of the questions I was thinking about in preparing for tonight is, you clearly had in your mind that when the opportunity arose, this was a good time for you, whether you're going to win or not. Obviously, you're going to put in the work, and God kind of guided your path there, as you rightly had said. But when you were thinking about, okay, this is what I want to do, and I know everything I have to balance in doing so, did anything happen that went against your expectations, that either you thought, wow, I didn't know I'd have to do and I had to, or did you expect running for this position for certain things to happen that didn't? I would love to kind of hear about your kind of post-mortem. This is what it was like. This is what it wasn't like.
Not post-mortem.
Well, that's the wrong word. Like reflection. Sorry, that's completely the wrong word.
Yeah.
The reflection of your first time running a larger race that you think you could possibly win.
Yes, that's a good question. So I didn't expect to lose my job when I started my campaign. So first and foremost, I was not prepared for that financial hit. It really kind of put this whole running for office thing in a whirlwind because I had to think quickly, like, how I'm gonna live. Like, I'm either going back to my mama's house or, something. So I want to implore people that you don't have to be rich or have a lot, but make sure you are stable running for office. And, it's been hard. Coming off of that, I didn't know how hard it would be for me to get a job after. And I'm just being very candid with y'all. To get a job being in this role. Like, I feel like, just to be completely honest, the white boys, once they get this position, like somebody hiring them quick, like they get these contracts, I don't know how it works, but us, like, it's so hard for me to find a job. Nobody wants to hire me for valid concerns of the fact that session is, from January to pretty much May, consistently Monday through Thursday, we're here at the state capitol. So it's like, it's a part-time job, but it's really full-time, y'all. But who can afford to allow me to do that? And who can afford my name? Because hiring a person like me also oftentimes come with a level of prestige, because if you don't pay me at a certain rate anyway, I'm gonna have to turn you down just based on my worth. I just can't accept pennies for all. I have a lot of connections. Like, if I call anybody, they have to pick up the phone, just based on my title. So it's not a lot of organizations that are grounded in the work that I like that can afford to hire me and allow me to be gone without seeing me day to day. So, they would have to really be confident or afford that or understand the process in order to understand how I'm able to move. And most of my colleagues are either retired or they own their own businesses or law firms. So they control their money and they already had these things established before coming to the legislature, where I didn't know ahead of time coming in how much more prepared I should have been with my career before walking into the legislature. So, but outside of that, I still get different contracts when people want me to do work. And, you know, because I don't have no kids and I'm single, I don't have no car, no, I just have rent, you know, my state pays enough to cover my life expenses. Like, I don't live no lavish lifestyle or anything like that. I just young, free, and don't have a lot of bills. And so I'm able to survive and be okay. But I have come to a point where it's time for me to start building wealth and start saving and doing these things. But I didn't know ahead of time coming into this role how challenging it would be to be able to establish a lifestyle. And things differ by states. Like, some states have full-time legislators that do pay them a living wage. They do get $100,000 a year. Like Pennsylvania, my colleagues in Pennsylvania, they make over 100K each legislator because they're full-time. So they pay them enough where they don't have to worry about this. And I also see that to me, when you full-time like that, your state runs better, but that's just my opinion. But Tennessee is really fiscally conservative. So, and also the public is very critical. I remember I had a contract to work the Mike Bloomberg campaign for president. And it was a big deal about him paying his employees a living wage. And so when I was making money, I got pushback from the activist community where they was putting my paycheck up online and talking about, you know, how dare you work for Bloomberg and get a paycheck and all. I'm thinking, what, you want me to starve? Like, you know, so I also get the other side of like, you know, I come from poor communities, and a lot of time because they're hungry, they expect me to be hungry with them all the time. And I get it, right? You know, but I play both sides and I find myself stuck in the middle. And so Memphis is also a high impoverished city that the biggest companies are FedEx, and most of the employees are the ones pushing boxes. So I also live in a city where the common job is a warehouse job making $12 or less. And so it's just all of those different dynamics that I think has been the hardest for me so far. But being a legislator is easy. I love my job, like, and I'm good at it too. You know, now that people have gotten to know me and they kind of can see me past, you know, what I was painted as. Now I get to do my job for real, you know, being blessed to sit on finance and criminal justice, things I asked for, is because they believe I'm here to get some work done. And to be just in my second session and to be able to do that is a microcosm of the respect I intentionally hope to earn from my Republican colleagues, so that they can see I'm here to get something done. And I'm real with that. And quite honestly, you know, off the record,
I wanted to hit London's remark about the part-time legislature.
mm-hmm.
And there are a bunch of part-time legislatures, and by the way, there's plenty of scholarly literature to support London believing that, you know, you just do better work if you're full-time. I don't know that Natalie O'Donnell Wood is on. Usually she can't join us, but she worked at the National Conference of State Legislatures, and they're, you know, they do really, really good work, and they kind of demonstrate that point. But in terms of entry into the state legislature, I wanted to sort of go even farther than London did. If you take a look at when for one thing, a lot of those state legislatures that are part-time are in more agricultural states, and they're in session when farmers can be there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't pay folks a living wage to do what ought to be a full-time year-round job. You don't do that. So folks of lesser means find it more challenging. They're less likely to run for office because they can't survive doing that. and you advantage certain professions. And maybe this is a section that I need to edit out on myself, but you know what? I don't want farmers in the state legislature. I don't. I don't.
Well, you don't want people who are only financially able to be there.
Right. But
And that's a big thing.
I'm gonna I have a buddy who he did his dissertation in the same area as I did, and he characterized farmers as the most politically irrational group in American society. The group most prone to responding to like culture war stuff.
Yes, it is Tennessee. I didn't mean to jump in, but that is
No,
so
go ahead.
true. In Tennessee, I mean, Tennessee is the agriculture state of the union. That's our nickname. We're known as the agriculture state. And so you're right. There's a lot of these more rural states who have part-time. And because so many people who were serving were farmers, and we have a very land-prone legacy in Tennessee. And even now, a lot of the legislators are farmers and they live in these very rural areas. So the only reason we have hemp in Tennessee is so they can grow it, because they got property, they got land, they can make money off of it. But us in the urban city, where are we going to grow hemp? Every city block is taken with a home. We don't have land and things like that. So there's also this disconnect between lifestyles, like he was pointing out, where the majority of, so all of our heavily concentrated city areas, Memphis, Nashville, Hamilton is 50-50 and Knoxville is 50-50, are Democrats controlled areas. But because you have more land space in rural areas that make up the size of the state, these tend to be Republican prone territories, but all the major cities all have Democratic representatives. And our lifestyles are a total 180, especially the things that we are doing. So, they have so many more ways of using their land to generate income, where if you live in an urban city, we have jobs. We have to, go to work to 9 to 5 or whatever we're doing. We don't have land. So I just wanted to kind of, support Pat's point on that. But I do have time for one more question. The question was about my future plans.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't let you go without asking that. I've had too many
There we
people
go.
message me, want to know, are you still have your eye on Washington?
Off the record.
There you go.
You got it.
One day, yes, I would love to be a congresswoman or a U.S. senator. Like, I want to be the next Kamala Harris, like one day. But at the same time, to be quite honest, like, you go through so much being in this role, like the public, you got to think twice when you attack candidates on social media and things like that, or comfort them, because they are real people too. Mm-hmm. And so the level of criticism and critiques and the beefs and the willing and dealing, and it's like being in this role sometimes like walking through a valley of snakes. And it can be very negative on your mental, emotional health, because you got to be a strong person to endure much of the things you have to endure being in this role. And sometimes I'm thinking like, I want to do this for 10 years, make some connections, get out, work for a corporation and make millions and be at home, have some kids and be a housewife, because my whole life up until this point, and I'm just 30, I've been serving other people. And at some point I'm ready to live life serving myself, being, instead of sacrificing, like, seeing the world, traveling, being able to go to New York Fashion Week and afford it with these skill sets. If I went to Google, hire me, let me be running your gov relations and pay me to do it, I will be happy. I could be in politics, but not in the spotlight and make money. Yes. But if, the opportunity for governor or anything national level opened up, I would strongly consider it if it's possible. But the only thing, I would never do local politics. I hate local politics. I don't care about potholes. But I'm just keeping it real. I don't. Like, but I'm a macro level thinker, and Pat, you know this, like when it comes to the nitty gritty, small detail ideas that local people have to work with, I don't like that stuff. But when it comes to macro level ideas and implementation on policies and funding and things like that, that's where my mind is. And I know me, and I know how the type of leader I want to be. So I'm not going to put myself in a role that I don't think I'm gonna like or be effective at. So if anybody has a Fortune 500 corporation about it, in another 8 years, I'm putting in my resume.
London,
Maybe
I
Awesome.
don't, but I just wanted to say that I love your story so much, and more people need to know about you. This was just really fascinating.
I think that I love that I have an open personality. I get it from my grandmother because I love people. Like this pandemic has been terrible for my mental health being in the house because I love people. But I just think you got to bring yourself. Like too many times people paint this picture patty perfect image of what a politician is supposed to be, and I'm not. But I truly believe I've been through a lot this last year, so I've been really focused on getting my mental health together, recovering from losing my my baby, and rebuilding a lot of relationships. That I say that God is gonna put me out there at the right time where He feels like I can handle it, and when He feels like I'm ready to be put on a higher pedestal. So I'm just trying to trust this process, continue to keep my faith, even though some days it's hard. I really want to talk to Him, be like, what are you doing right now? Because I'm not happy. But I just want to continue to be authentic and tell my story when possible. But sis, we'll get there when the time is right. God will make it happen.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. We send big love and best wishes for everything. And we know that, we'll just continue to watch you and all the amazing things you continue to do.
Thank you so much. And it was so good to connect with you, my sisters. If y'all ever need anything from me, please let me know. It's best to contact me on Instagram. That's the social media tool I use the most, even better than email. So it's that Instagram at London Lamar TN. So send me a message or a DM if you need anything, need me to connect with anyone or help you in any way. I'm open to doing it because I love my St. Mary's sisters.
Thanks so much, London. That was delightful.
No problem.
And
Awesome.
educational.
No problem. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye, London.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.